right. Cast desktop. No.
Hello, Christine. Good afternoon.
You.
Huh?
I tried on my own. I did. I tried. I got the sound going. I did. Ask everyone. Okay, so I tried both casting the desktop and the tab.
To the training room.
Which one is supposed to be, tab or desktop?
Desktop, but it's probably because maybe I don't know.
While we're getting set up here in the conference room, for those of you at home or in the office, you might want to pull up a copy of the residential listing agreement so you can refer to it.
You can try it now.
Yeah, okay.
So click out of that again. Yeah. All right, so click out of it one more time. And then before you click
Click out of what?
the
Casting?
yes. Now, before you click that, go to desktop.
Amazing, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. How's everyone's 2022 going?
Awesome.
Yeah,
Too fast.
anything really
Rough.
great anyone wants to share while I pull up a copy of the residential listing agreement?
I went on.
Seller are too
Doing
demanding.
the same day.
Yeah,
Go killer. How'd they go?
well, they said they were gonna get back to me, but I feel like the vibes were really good, so we'll see.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Hey, Richard.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Did Josh reach out to you?
Who?
Josh Spitzen?
No,
Oh, he told me he was gonna assign you. I'll talk to him
Okay.
today
all right.
because I know that was still on my desk.
Okay.
Let's see here. Those of you at home, can you see zip forms, what I'm pulling up now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Anyone at home? John
Yeah.
Farren,
Yeah, I
Yes,
see.
yes.
it,
Yes.
Yes.
can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
we do.
Can I not hear you?
Yes, we do.
I
We
guess
hear you.
no.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can
Can
hear you.
someone talk for me though? Because I'm not hearing you guys
Yeah,
now.
I was on mute.
Yep, I can hear you.
No,
You
we're
are
talking. I
Okay,
don't think she
but we're
hears
not
us. Yeah.
hearing
Can hear
you.
you.
Lovely.
Yeah, she can't hear us. We hear us. I hear you guys, but I guess she doesn't.
same here.
Hmm.
I think the sound of the computer itself is off.
Yeah, on the bottom here.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's weird because we were hearing it earlier and I didn't change it. Okay. Now
Can
I
you
can,
hear me now? Ah, there we go.
yeah. Great, thanks guys. Okay. So just go into some random transaction here. So you guys can see zip forms at home?
Yes, we do.
Yes,
Yeah.
So in zip forms, I love this search bar. This is my best friend. Okay, so anytime I don't know what I need, there's usually a form for it. as a new agent, a very powerful tool. So if you are looking for a document and you don't know the exact name, you know, you can type in a keyword like listing, and stuff that's associated with listings. Documents that are associated with listings are going to come up. So today we're talking about residential listing agreement, also referred to as RLA. We use a lot of acronyms in real estate. So we'll click on that. It adds it to your transaction, go into the document. Okay. There are always additional documents that are included with every type of contract. Okay, so if that's a buyer's exclusive representation, if that's a single party agreement with a buyer or seller, if that's a residential listing agreement or a residential purchase agreement or a residential income purchase agreement, you're going to see an agency disclosure always, okay? And you don't need to notate these things. You don't have to manually add them. They're automatically included, okay? You're going to see fair housing and discrimination advisory, possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, disclosure and consent. Very important as a listing agent, because you have no idea who is going to sell the property, who's going to represent the buyer. And anyone from the same brokerage is technically dual representation. It doesn't mean the same agent, okay? So very important document. Wire fraud and electronic funds transfer advisory, not as relevant to sellers. Sellers aren't usually wiring funds. They're usually receiving wires. But it's also included with residential purchase and listing agreements. All right, so here we are at the residential listing agreement, or RLA. You can see the revision dates, okay, at the top and bottom of each page. It will always tell you revision date. And I'll tell you right now, CAR, the California Association of Realtors, they change our documents all the time. They edit them, they change the name, they add to them. And the only time we ever hear about them is when we have massive changes like we just did at the end of this last year, okay? So just keep that in mind. For this reason, again, I like to use zip forms online, not on the desktop version. The desktop version doesn't always correctly update forms and documents, and you want to make sure you're using the most up-to-date versions, okay? All right, so we'll start at the top here. And all of you in class and at home, as long as you don't have background noise going on, I like an interactive class. Feel free to interrupt me. I misspeak. Sometimes I don't make sense. I'll say seller instead of buyer and vice versa. Please feel free to chime in. Please feel free to stop me if you don't understand a concept. I'm sure there are many ways we can explain whatever it is we're talking about, and I want to make sure everyone follows along. Okay. Right. So top left corner is a box that says date prepared. This is just the date that you actually write the listing agreement. It's not the date the listing starts. It's not the day it's signed. It's the date that you prepare it. Okay. This is an important date for legal reference purposes. So let's say you take a listing and you need to modify a term at some point. Maybe you want to change the start or end date, the expiration period, the price. You'd use documentation that amends the terms within this listing agreement. And if you're going to amend anything on this listing agreement, it's going to make reference to this listing agreement, and it's going to ask for the date of the listing agreement. And that is this date, the date prepared. Okay. It's a legal identification date. Okay. Section 1, exclusive right to sell. These are going to be your seller's names, okay? It's very important when you are putting clients' names in. For instance, here we have Sean Gruber, Nicole Gruber. Let's say I rep the buyer on this transaction, so I have no idea if this is the case, but let's say they're husband and wife, right? So I don't write Sean and Nicole Gruber in here. I don't write Mr. and Mrs. Sean Gruber in here. I need to have all of the legal names, the full names listed of every single owner on title. Okay, so where can we get the exact spelling and correct vesting of everyone on title? Yeah, title rep. Call up your title rep. They all have title software that you can access as well, so that you can do so, outside of normal business hours. So we can have a natural person's name in here or an entity name. Can anyone give me some examples of an entity? What's an entity?
LLC.
LLC?
Corporation.
Corporation? Estate? Right? Trust? Trust would be the most common. Okay. So when you are writing offers or listing agreements and you go to property records, particularly with entities, specifically trusts, the name is usually wrong on property records that you can access in the MLS. That's because there's a limited amount of characters that they use there. So very important that you get your vesting Okay, you're vesting from title. Why is this important, guys? Well, you don't have a valid listing agreement if you don't have all of and the correct parties signing your listing agreement. Okay, so very important. You want to make sure that you get that correct. Also, yes.
So let's say you put in a LLC,
Mhm.
then you have another form that they all sign to represent that LLC.
It's called a representative capacity signature disclosure.
Okay.
Yeah, RCSD-S. Dash S stands for seller because obviously both buyer and seller can be entities. And there is a box on this listing agreement that you'd check to indicate that someone's signing in representative capacity. And in zip forms, it will auto-populate once you check that box. And you would include it with the listing agreement as an addendum.
Okay, so then who signs the RLA? All three?
So any owner signs the RLA. As far as an entity is concerned, how do you know who signs on behalf of the entity? Well, unless you have a copy of, the articles of incorporation or whatever documents stipulate, who has authority to operate on behalf of that entity, you really just have to ask the homeowner. Okay. And take their word for it. You will need a copy of the entity documents in order to actually, close an escrow. So it's a great time to ask for it up front, and you can send it along to the title rep. As the listing agent, you're generally the one directing escrow and title business and selecting those services. So great time to ask for it upfront before you list the property. Send it to title and make sure there are no issues, just to double check. Yes. An assistant cannot legally sign a real estate agreement for another party.
How about a manager?
A business manager cannot either. We have something, we can do an attorney in fact, okay? An attorney in fact, and there's a special document that escrow and title will draft up, power of attorney. But power of attorney in the state of California for real estate is a specific document in relation to each property. So even if your client has a general power of attorney, that power of attorney does not actually have legal authority to sign on behalf of a real estate transaction. There has to be one specifically drawn up just in relation to the property. Yes.
That is kind of in fact document has to be notarized, right?
An attorney in fact document has to be notarized. Yes. Yes. A power of attorney. But it's called special power of attorney or specific power of attorney. And really you should not be so concerned with knowing the ins and outs of this, because it's really going to be escrow and title that say, yes, this is right. Yes, we're going to use this. In fact, I think escrow a lot of times is the one that drafts this in case you need it. Okay.
The revised, it says here June.
Yeah.
21.
Mhm.
I thought it was December.
That was the residential purchase agreement that was revised in December. Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about sellers now, entities, who's going to sign on behalf. One other thing, a constant question I get. So if our seller is an entity, let's say I have the Christen Tull Trust, right? So the Christen Tull Trust would literally be verbatim, word for word, typed into the seller line. But if I sign the agreement, do I sign the Christen Tull Trust? No, I'm a trustee. I sign my name. So in DocuSign, you need to make sure, especially if you link your documents through DocuSign to zip forms and it's auto placing fields for you, you're actually going to have to go in and edit the signature line to say my name, because it's going to populate as the Christen Tull Trust, not Christen Tull. Okay. Right. Because I can, and also a trust can be set up with 3 signers that need to sign, or 2 trustees where only one needs to sign, or both need to sign. So, it's really important that you have accurate information as to who the authorized signer is on behalf of an entity. Okay.
And what do you get it from? Also from title?
No, you'd have to get a copy of a trust or articles of incorporation or something like that from your client, from the client. Yeah. All right. So hereby employs and grants. Like I said, I just pulled up a document in a transaction where I repped buyer. So for us, this is going to be the name of our brokerage. This is not our name as the agent. So if you work here, what is it going to say, guys? Keller Williams, Beverly Hills. Yes. Okay. Beginning date. This is going to actually be the beginning date of the listing period. All right. So this is one of the stickiest points of a listing contract. Why? Really, I want to secure my listing so it's mine right away, right? So nothing can be changed. And also I can't safely shop or market the property until the listing period starts. I have no protection as an agent, right? There's no legal agreement where the seller has to pay me commission until the listing period starts, okay? So what do I do? Because when I sign the listing agreement, I'm generally not prepared to go on the market, and there's a rule that you have to place a property on the MLS within, it's either 2 or 3, I think it's 2 days of your listing period starting, unless you use a document, and you don't need to worry so much about remembering this now. We're going to have a lengthy discussion about it later on. An SELM. Yes.
You're representing a buyer in this, right?
Yeah.
Someone suggested the other day that they only work with buyers that they get them specifically on a listing agreement. Do you do the same exact thing?
What?
They unless it's an exclusive, like, instead of it being like an open listing, they have everyone that is a potential buyer sign it like that. You only will do-
So that has nothing to do with listing agreement. A buyer wouldn't be in a listing agreement at all. I think what you're talking about is a buyer representation exclusive agreement. Yeah. And if you want, after class, we can pull up the document and see if that's what you mean. All right. So Keller Williams, Beverly Hills, beginning date. Oh, so if you're, so there's a kind of a little tricky, a slippery trick to get the best of both worlds here. Okay. So I'm backtrack a little bit. One of my pet peeves is people say I have an off market or a pocket listing. Okay. But they don't. What they have is a seller lead. They have a seller lead. They have a listing lead. Because to truly have an off market or pocket listing, what do you have to have? You still have to have a listing agreement. It just means that you also have an SELM, a seller instruction to exclude from the multiple listing service, that it's not going to be marketed publicly, either temporarily or for the entirety of the listing period. Okay. So that's what a true pocket listing is. And that's important because it says what the seller is going to pay and it protects us as agents. So those of you who ever deal with pocket listings, if you're repping buyer, you want to make sure that person associated with the seller has some sort of agreement that gets you paid. And if they don't, you need a single party agreement. Okay, so what do I do in order to take a listing that's active right away, but skirt the rule of entering it onto the MLS right away when I'm not ready? Because it's going to take me like a week to get photos at a minimum. I take the listing active as of the day that they sign it. Okay, and I draft an SELM stating that the seller instructs me to exclude it from public marketing for the entirety of the listing. And then as soon as I have my photos scheduled and I know when I can actually launch my listing, I draft a modification of existing terms, which is a document like an addendum or an amendment for a residential purchase agreement. Modification of existing terms or modification of terms is an addendum for the terms of the listing agreement. And what I'll write on there is listing period to start, and then I'll enter the date that I actually intend to post it on the MLS. So it shows 0 days on market when I enter it, which is advantageous for my seller. So I have protection and listing the entire time. I simply modify the listing start date when I know when I actually want to start it. And then there's a second item on this modification of terms. I delete that SELM document in its entirety, because I want to now publicly market this property. Make sense?
Okay, so you secure yourself by putting the begin date.
The day they sign, yes.
And then the guy's like, hey, I want to get this property ready, and it'll be 3 months. Say.
Okay.
Okay, and then, so then you make him sign that SELN for the 3 months.
I just say for the entirety of the listing because I don't really know when it's going to be ready.
Right.
And then I draft a modification of terms.
Uh-huh.
And on the modification of terms, I say listing period is hereby amended to begin on the date once I know it and end on, whatever that period of time is, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months that you have the listing. And the second item is SELM dated blah, blah, blah is hereby deleted in its entirety.
Like it never existed.
Like it never existed. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
What's that?
Okay, I have a question, Christian.
Hold on. I have a question in the office and then I'll take yours.
What's the advantage of doing this?
The advantage of doing this is the question being asked. When you guys ask questions here, please speak up so they can hear you at home. The advantage of doing this is I have an active listing that is mine, that is protected. If anyone approaches that seller, then, let's say the neighbor came to them the next day and was like, I want to buy the house. It's still my listing. I'm still entitled to a commission. nobody else can come in and undercut me in the time that I met with the seller and they agreed to give me the listing and they're doing some repair work. And then, their cousin's like, hey, I'll do it for you for 1%. It's my listing. It's protected. Also, I can come and tell you lovely people, and maybe we can do something together, right? In the interim. Yeah. Okay. What was the question at home?
I think you just answered it. This is Shawnee. I was just verifying that you delete the SELM once you've done the amendment.
I delete it in the amendment. I put both items in the amendment. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What is that modification?
So I think they recently changed the name. It's modification of terms or something like that. It used to be MOT, but I know it was changed. Modification of listing it's now. So it's even clearer. Most of the time when CAR renames or alters documents, it's for the better to make stuff clearer, easier for you guys to find. Not always, but in this case, makes it clear. So modification of listing. Yes.
And pocket listing agreement is only for leasing for properties that are off the market?
Yeah, a pocket listing means I have this document signed. Oops, wrong document. It means I have a listing agreement signed, but I have an SELM. So if I don't have a signed agreement with the seller, I don't have a pocket listing. I have a listing lead, right? And there are a couple ways I can handle that. If my client won't sign a listing agreement, I can get a single party compensation agreement, okay? But if I have no agreement, I can very easily get fucked and make no money. I can introduce another agent or a buyer and I get cut out entirely. They have no obligation to pay me unless they sign something that says they're going to pay me for my services. Okay, so be very careful, especially those of you repping the buyer. You've got to go double check the listing agent or potential listing agent, right? And make sure they have an agreement that protects you as well.
What's called a single party agreement?
Mm-hmm.
And it's only for the property you're going to show to.
You can modify it in many ways. You can modify it to cover a client, an area, several properties, one property. You can also modify the time frame on it. It expires at some point. So, generally speaking, if I was going to introduce a client to an off-market property, I would want a single party agreement with at least 6 months on there. Okay, because I don't want them to just buy their time for a month and then go buy it behind my back without me. Yes.
So what if you're in that off-market period and you get an offer and you want to accept? Do you have to modify?
No,
We're good.
you don't have to modify it, although I would, because I'd still like to pop it on the MLS so I can have credit on it. Yeah, so I would,
modify it that day.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, modify it, delete the SELM so you can pop it on the MLS so you can pop your name right on there. Show your sales. Let's see here. All right, so listing period end date. Can anyone tell me what the most common listing period time frame is?
6 months?
6 months. Yeah. Can we do longer or shorter?
3 months.
Yeah, we can absolutely do any time frame we want. But I do want to tell you this. It's probably not always the best idea. If you're working with the seller and they're like, I want to give you a listing for 30 days, you're going to put a lot of effort, money, and work into a listing. Okay. And, in this market, you generally sell within a couple of weeks if things are priced appropriately. But this market is not a typical market. It will at some point shift. I have no idea when. I hope not for a very long time. But typically these people who want these short-term listing periods, they're not the most, easy to deal with client. I generally see someone who wants a short listing period, who also wants, 20, 30, 40% more for their property than it's worth. So just keep it in mind, like, this is your business. Not all business is good business. Make sound judgment calls with your time and your money. Okay. Ask questions. The worst, it's very heartbreaking for me to see with the new agents. They get very excited. They get a listing and this listing is ridiculous. It's unsellable or it's triple priced what it should be. You're so excited as a new agent to try to make things work. And I'm not saying that you can't make things work when it doesn't start off perfectly, but there is a certain level where it just doesn't make sense. So this is your business. Treat yourselves and your pocketbook and your business with respect. Not every listing is a good listing. Yes.
But if it's price like 3 times the amount, can you can you revisit it in a couple weeks?
Sure, but if they don't agree in writing to reduce the price with you, you're stuck. Yes,
Isn't it after like 90 days, it's kind of like an old listing?
after 30 days in this market, it's an old
30
listing. If it hasn't sold in 30 days, price is wrong.
So 6 months is, who would even,
I still put 6 months on my listing contracts. Who knows? Sometimes things happen outside of your control. You know, like I could take a listing, open escrow, find out through the course of escrow something was unpermitted, or there's an encroachment on the property, or there's some crazy lien from an old loan that has actually been paid off or refinanced. That company is no longer in existence. We have to get a duplicate reconveyance. That takes months sometimes. That has nothing to do with the buyer or seller, right? But you know, and your contract, if you're in escrow and your listing expires while you're in contract, the terms are still extended till your close of escrow. But you know, it could fall out. Maybe that buyer is sick and tired of waiting on that paperwork that no one can track down. So I still like having my 6-month listing agreement, just because there are going to be things outside of your control. It's one of the terrible and really exciting parts of this job is everything's different. There's a lot of variables. You're always going to be learning. Things are going to change and move, and you're going to grow a lot. Okay.
Kristen,
Yes.
this is Malika. How are you?
Hi,
I
darling.
have a question. So Kristen, my question is, I don't know if you explained it or not. I didn't get it. But for the new agent like me, I didn't have any listings so far. So let's say some people say, okay, you can work on it, bring me a buyer, and then you can have the listing. Did you explain that? How can we assign something?
Single
with
party,
them?
single party agreement.
Single party? It's in this form, or it's another separate
It's
one?
another separate form.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next line is for the address. Guys, very important that you have the accurate legal address. Where can you get an accurate legal address? MLS, not really, title, yeah. And what do I mean by accurate address? So Los Angeles is a huge legal city, but it has a lot of areas. So Venice, Sherman Oaks, Hollywood, these are all actually city of Los Angeles. And it's really important that we have the legal city name because especially escrow, title, other agents, out of area people, it needs to be clear. Every city has different transfer requirements. Los Angeles in particular has some additional requirements that a lot of other cities don't have. So, and it's a little confusing. So Hollywood is city of Los Angeles, but West Hollywood is its own city, right? It doesn't always make sense. Brentwood, right? Brentwood is Los Angeles, but there's actually a legal town or city in Northern California called Brentwood. So if you address something as Brentwood, it's not going to come out right. So when in doubt, I don't want to see area names in contracts, right? So I don't want to see Venice. I don't want to see Sherman Oaks. I want to see Los Angeles. I want to see Los Angeles. Okay. So you can get this from title. You can get this from any legal description, which you might be able to find on property record section of the MLS. You might be able to find from Zemus. Zemus.lacity.org, obviously, as the name implies, only applies to LA City, but it has assessor information, it has legal description, it has zoning information. As a real estate agent, you should know about Zemus.lacity.org, play around on it, enter some addresses, check it out. There's tons of tabs, ordinances, things you're not going to understand, but there's a lot of stuff you will. One of the most helpful ones, especially if you're dealing with rent control stuff, is whether the property is subject to rent control. City rent control, not state rent control, city rent control. So legal address, assessor parcel number, also referred to more commonly as APN, is very important. One of the biggest mistakes I see on contracts, listing, or purchase is it's missing. The APN number is a much stronger identifier of a property to escrow, title, and any authority than our street addresses. Okay, so APN number is very important. If you are working with a property in the county of Los Angeles, it will always follow a 4-digit - 3-digit - 3-digit format. Okay, other counties have different formats. So if you don't see 4-3-3, something's wrong. There are rare occasions where properties do not have APNs. A lot of times this occurs with new construction Or with a condo, that is a land lease. Okay, so if you can't find an APN, don't drive yourself nuts. Call your title rep and find out what's going on. Yes, Richard.
You say that there are 10-digit numbers in Los Angeles or Los Angeles
County.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you get title records instantly, or you need to make it?
Pretty instantly. Yeah, pretty instantly. You'll meet a title rep that you like, and you'll be able to call them or call their customer service line during business hours, but they can also set you up with software that you can access yourself at any time. Yes.
In regards to a vacant land,
Mhm.
what if they don't have the street address?
APN. Yeah, vacant land sometimes doesn't have a street address
Just APN.
because sometimes there are no streets. Yeah, the APN number is its name,
Awesome.
is its legal identifier. Yeah. But again, just always confirm with title rep. Yeah. All right. These boxes are for either a mobile home or some more complicated types of sales. With a mobile home, guys, a mobile home is personal property unless the mobile home owner also owns the land upon which it sits. So you cannot sell a mobile home where the mobile home owner leases the land, which is the most common type of mobile home setup. Okay, that is more like a car sale than it's personal property. Did I see another question somewhere?
So is it a bill set?
We can't operate this mobile home sale that doesn't have the land. I don't know how it works. There are people who specialize in just that.
Kristen,
Yes.
can I ask a question now?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Malika,
so-
never.
No.
Never. I don't come here to answer questions.
Kristen, how about coming soon listing? How like
That's a little off topic. My
no,
personal.
I mean how is going to be timing here? Timing on
coming
this.
soon listing and has a section in here. We'll talk about it then, but I don't do coming soon. Why? I think it kind of violates ethical standards. If I
Why?
put a listing up on the MLS coming soon, you know, do I want to show it to other agents? No, I consider myself a pretty ethical person, but I might just accidentally be a little bit more motivated to show it to unrepped buyers. Right? I don't want to put myself in that situation. It's not in the best interest of my seller. So I don't find it, I choose not to do it unless my client specifically instructs me to do so. Okay, it's a great way to get some hype going on, but it's also a great way to accidentally not represent your seller the best you could. Or now that you've heard that, not so accidentally, right? So this
Why
is
you said it's good? Why you said it's good?
I didn't say it's good. I said I think it's
No,
bad.
you said one reason. You said
Huh?
one reason. You said there is one reason. Maybe it's
Oh.
good.
The one reason that I would do it is if my seller instructs me to do it.
Oh, how about we
Does
can
create
like
hype.
mark?
What?
We can because it's coming soon.
Dude, you
it's
can do
not
it.
going.
It's legal. It's legit. I'm telling you, I personally don't like it. I don't know how you do it because I don't do it.
Okay.
But it does talk about it in the contract. So we'll talk about it when we come to that section of the contract. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So the second box is properties being sold as part of a probate, conservatorship, guardianship, or receivership. C for probate listing addendum and advisory. So probate sales can be either very simple and very much like a standard sale with a little bit of extra documentation, or extremely difficult and very not like a standard transaction. So, and the difference is court confirmation. So if you're doing a probate sale listing with no court confirmation, you're in the clear, you'll just fill out this extra documentation. You'll want to see someone like your mentor, myself, Michael Rosales, if you're dealing with this type of sale, because there'll be some extra language, documentation, a few extra requirements. If you're dealing with a more complicated one, you're really going to need someone who is familiar with probate sale. What's that?
What about short sales?
Depends on the type of short sale. You know, so I did a short sale last year, but it was with a hard money lender, very easy. If you're doing short sales with institutional lenders, much more complicated, and they all have their own special requirements. Short sale listings typically are only given out by banks to agents that go through training and programs with them, have long cultivated relationships. So if you are specializing in that or doing a lot of that, you're going to know more about it than I will for sure. All right, let's see here. Listing price and terms. Guys, who decides on the list price? Yeah, the owner. Sucks, right? And is the owner always the most reasonable about this number? No. It is what it is. I don't know if it is truly legally binding or not, and you touched on this a little bit earlier. 1 second. But if my seller is kind of within the reasonable realm of what I think a reasonable listing price is, I will see if I can try listing it at their number with them for a little while, and actually under listing terms, type in something like, you know, if no offer has been accepted, you know, within 30 days of the listing period, start date, you know, agent Keller Williams, Beverly Hills, and seller hereby agree to reduce price from, you know, 1 million to 900, whatever it is, and see if I can get them to contractually agree ahead of time to a built-in price reduction. Yes.
You always have to make sure we write it out as well, right? The listing price. Like as.
No, it doesn't have to be written out 225,000. You can write numbers. Yeah. Yeah. So that is one little trick I try to see if I can get away with. Not all sellers will agree to it, but you know, if you can get away with it once or twice, it'll be very helpful to you to have a built-in price reduction. Because truly in this market, if it's not sold in a couple weeks, price is wrong. Listing terms. Okay, so I told you, you know, I use this space for complicated stuff. Free-form stuff. I want to, you know, just warn you, caution. No matter how well written and clear whatever you write in here is, until you're super familiar with the process and the contracts, you don't know if you've covered everything that whatever it is you're modifying could possibly affect within the agreement. Okay, so if you're ever writing free-form stuff in here, make sure someone who knows what they're doing, really doing, takes a look at this for you, and you explain what you're trying to do to them so they can make sure this language covers you in the ways that you need to be and is correctly written. So one of the other things I oftentimes will write in listing terms is I promise a lot of my sellers that if myself or anyone from my team represents the buyer on my listing, I will reduce their commission from 5% to 4.5%. You know, if you can get more complicated than that too. You know, maybe you get on a rare occasion a seller who's like, yeah, if you sell my property for 1.2 or higher, I'll give you 6%. But if you sell it under, you're getting 5%. So you have endless, you know, options. You can write anything you want in here. Just be very careful about making sure it's written correctly and protects you and is fully, you know, covers everything. All right, compensation to broker. So what's the most typical commission, guys? 5%, right? Seller pays both buyer and seller's agent's commissions. So most standard is 5%. A lot of new agents come in here and they're like 6, and I'm like, good fucking luck, because I'm up against you. I have 20 years on you and I'm 5 all day long. I never even try for 6. So don't shoot yourself in the foot by trying to, you know, shoot for the moon. You know, if I have a seller who's like, oh, I will pay 6% commission, or they want me to do a lot of extra stuff for them, like oversee a renovation while they live out of the country, I might ask for 6% in that instance or something like that. Okay, if I'm doing something exceptional, but that's the only time I'm asking for more than 5. Yes.
What's the minimum you think would be fair for the agent to accept?
The minimum?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, let's all help each other out. Let's try for 5, but if I have to, yeah, I'd never do anything lower than 4. Unless it's my longtime developer client who's giving me front and back side every single time. Then I might do like 3.5, because I have to give 2.5 up to the buyer's agent, right?
And you would still give 2.5?
Yeah. No matter what my commission is, no matter what the total commission is, if I want to sell that property, I better offer the buyer's agent 2.5. I'm actually in escrow right now on a property that on new construction, beautiful home, priced correctly. Sat on the market for forever because the buyer commission is 1.75. And Jesse, are you on the call? Jesse's my team agent. So the clients were asking over and over, you know, what's wrong with this property? Why didn't it sell? And our response was literally because agents are shady and not ethical. Legally, we're supposed to show you everything that might meet your needs on the market, but they're offering 1.75% which is, 0.5% lower or 0.75% lower than what is considered industry standard. And so a lot of agents aren't going to bother showing this property. So it hurts your sellers significantly. And this is also a counter argument for you when your sellers are trying to grind you down as far as the total commission price is. So like that client who's like, I want 3.5%. And I'm like, well, look, agents aren't going to show your property if we don't offer them 2.5%. So you want me to do my job for 1%? Let me show you what that looks like after my split with my broker, after I pay for your photos, after all of my time, right? Doesn't make sense. So even the hardest sellers with that argument, I can oftentimes get them up from that number to at least a 4. So it does help. It is helpful. All right. So this is the total commission line here. Can we do flat fees? Can we do more interesting, creative commission agreements? We can legally, but our brokerage might not be okay with that. So if you're going to do anything other than 5%, okay, which is the industry standard, you need to go and talk to Mike Rosales or Josh and get their permission. Okay.
So you're gonna do it for 4% at the top one?
Mm-hmm. Until you're a rock star agent that no one's going to say anything to. Yeah. Even I have to ask. Yeah. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Maybe Jeff Yarbrough doesn't have to ask. And Keller Williams is cool. Our office is cool. They want to help you. We want to make money, but there are times where, someone wants to do something for 1%, just doesn't make sense. It's not going to happen. It's not going to sell. No one's going to show it. Bringing in someone like Mike Rosales might be helpful to you. They might help you coach through talking to that seller and getting them up in the commission. So, don't be cavalier. You can't just agree to any commission split, especially if it's not a percentage. So this more customized stuff gets really weird. You need to make sure the brokerage approves it. Technically, as sales agents, none of these listings or buyer sales are ours. They belong to the brokerage. We're the sales agent. Okay. So the brokerage does actually have authority to cancel your listing agreement. They do. They do. Because it is with their supervisory permission, and we have procedures and standards that if you don't get, permission for the exceptions, they can say that, you violated the terms of your agreement with them.
Basically, we're like working for the broker.
No, not working for the broker. The broker is responsible for all of our actions and therefore has to set a standard by which they hold us for our conduct and procedures. So we don't work for anyone. We are self-employed, but we do have a broker who's supervisory, who on the flip side is also actually punished for anything we do wrong. Okay. It's not just us that gets punished when we do something wrong. The broker gets punished as well. Okay. Financially, significantly financially. All right. So yes.
So once you get this signed, you have to automatically that day put it into opportunities.
Yes.
And then
So
that's when they check and they're like, hey, you can't do this.
No. If you are doing anything other than standard, you need to get the permission before you sign it or put it into opportunities. Yeah. So yes, once you get a listing agreement signed, the very first thing that you should do after you say yay and high five your friends, is you need to go into KW Command, enter the client contact, create an opportunity for the listing, and you need to upload the listing agreement and the other documents that come with it right away to the office and submit it to the broker for review. Because if there's a big problem, they're going to catch it and help you fix it. Okay.
You do that before you go visit the listing, the seller?
No, how do I get a listing agreement unless I met with the seller or the property?
But if you already signed with the seller,
So once you sign the listing agreement, then you enter it into KW Command.
what if something happened that they don't approve it, then you go back to the seller and say.
Yeah, I mean, if
Everything's too
the
low.
office doesn't approve it, something's significantly wrong, then you want it fixed. Yeah. Okay, so section 3A2 is called an exclusions period. Okay, so what an exclusions period is a protection for a listing agent. Okay, so during the time I have an active listing, I should be keeping track of every party I show it to and everyone who comes into the open house. And I keep some pretty diligent records of this because this does happen way more often than you think. If I keep that list and I don't end up selling my listing, or the seller wants to cancel the listing, and I provide them with a list of all the people I showed the property to during the time I had an active listing, and this has to be before I sign a cancellation, or it has to be before the expiration, I have to deliver it before, or it doesn't apply. Whatever time frame I put in section 3A2, I am protected in the case that any of those people on that list or their family members or affiliates purchases that property, even if it's listed with another agent, I am still entitled to receive my full commission from my previous listing agreement for whatever time frame is in this box. Can anyone tell me what the
6
common
months?
6 months, 180 days? Yes.
And how many names are you allowed to give? Let's say you have 20.
As
people.
many as you've shown,
It's not
as
limited
long
to
as your list
6,
is.
or-
as long as your list is. If I showed it to 2,000 people, I'm submitting 2,000 people. If I showed it to 20 people, I'm submitting 20 people.
So is there a car form for making that list?
There might be now. I haven't had to do one, thankfully. I haven't had a cancellation or expiration in.
Check their IDs.
So Kristen, what is if within
Hold
how many
on,
calendar
Malika,
days?
someone's talking in the office. Hold on. Yes?
So they check their IDs.
No, you just have them sign in. Harder part is if it's relisted with someone and there's a buyer, how do you find out who that buyer is until after it closes, right? Super agent, super secret agent, right? Stealthy agent. Okay, Malika, what's up?
I'm asking, so what is if within how many calendar days usually we put?
180 usually, but that's negotiable with your client. Okay, so
Okay.
I don't see a car form document, but no, I just literally either draft an addendum to the listing agreement, or I just literally send a list. And I send that list in an email with confirmation of, acknowledging when we're going to cancel or expire, asking them for confirmation of receipt of my exclusions list, and I copy Micah Rosales on it. That way I have, a third party and the brokerage has a record of it. It hasn't happened to me personally, but before I was on my own, I worked with a lot of big agents. It happens a lot in the high-end world, a lot. And so a few times a year. And we're not talking 50K, we're talking $450,000. Yeah.
Kristen,
Yes.
how can we understand after, let's say they sell to another person and after our cancellation, how can we understand who are they selling to?
We
Like-
just talked about that. It's hard.
Oh, it's
Thankfully, we have social media. We can stalk pretty well online. The longer you're in this business, the more friends you're going to have. So, when I worked for Brandon and Rainey Williams, I had a situation like this that happened, but, we couldn't figure out who the buyer was. But I happened to be really good friends with the assistant of the agent that shared an office with the agent who had taken the new listing. I got the information. You get this kind of stuff through relationships with other people. Obviously, you have to be extremely discreet. You never, ever sell your co-conspirator down the river. A lot of times it's sheer blind luck, or, it happens, like I said, especially in high end. There's a lot of media around high end sales, right? So very often the person is of note. And so there's some sort of, media coverage on it.
So what exactly happens with the people that show up at the? What was it that?
A canceled open house.
No, I thought you were explaining, not a canceled open house, so the people on the list. that they
Nothing
were
happens with
canceled.
them. The list is given to the seller.
Oh,
And
I
if they
thought-
happen to purchase it after your listing expires or cancels with your seller, and they relist it, or they do a direct sale off market, anyone that was on your list within the time frame you wrote into your contract for the coverage of the exclusions period, if anyone affiliated with them, their family buy it, you're entitled to your full commission.
Oh, got it.
And you technically are required to step back in and act as the listing agent and perform all the duties.
Got it.
A lot of times, though, that's contentious. So what I'll see is new listing agent, former listing agent will actually agree to co-represent that seller, and they'll agree to take half. That's usually something your broker is going to help you negotiate, though. Not very easy to work with a seller who's like, fuck you, I don't want to work with you, right? But again, you know, it's not as common in normal priced property, but it happens. And I've seen it happen in normal price stuff too. Oh, thank you. Okay. So moving on, section 3B(c). Sometimes the seller's like, insists on doing something weird, like paying you a bonus or some staggered commission. If that's the case, it would go here. And again, you know, Michael Rosales has to approve this, and I'd probably have him approve or even write the language for me as well. This is very non-standard. D is talking about cooperation with the other agent and lists the amount of the total commission, because remember, seller pays buyer and seller agent commission, which is typically somewhere between 4 and 6%, with 5 being most common. The portion that is going to the cooperating or buyer's agent is listed here. So you check this box. And so if it was 5, you'd want to enter 2.5. Okay. Now we talked about how buyer's agent commission really for the seller to sell, you know, at the best possible terms should be 2.5. Sometimes it's just not going to happen. So let's say, you know, total commission's 4 and seller's like, no, split it evenly. That's fine. What becomes very unethical is when the seller's agent takes more than the buyer's agent, unless there's an extenuating circumstance, like I said, like you oversee some major renovations for them, things like that. So there is an ethical standard for splitting commission evenly, guys, okay, at a bare minimum, unless there's something very unusual. Will you get in trouble? Probably not. You know, the people that do it really unethically, I think, you know, they're not pointing this out to their seller that, yeah, you're paying me 5% commission, but I'm taking 3 and offering 2 to the buyer's agent. You know, they're hiding that fact from them. So, and they used to do this by leaving this section blank, was like the trickiest way that these unethical agents would do this. This box should never, ever be blank. It's really important for you also, just in protection, okay? Just in for reasons of protection. Section 3F, this would be only apply in the case that you're taking a listing that had been previously listed but not sold, okay? So if the seller is relisting the property with you, I just told you about how the exclusion period works to your advantage. If you're the second agent, it could work to your disadvantage, right? So you'd want to list whatever brokerage an agent previously had listed the property. But this is also a great time to get a copy of the cancellation if it was canceled. Make sure it's actually legally canceled, not on hold. You know, you want to make sure it's actually legally expired or canceled. And also ask that seller, did your listing agent, your previous listing agent, did they give you an exclusions list? You want a copy of that. You want a copy of that. Now, if they say no, great, fantastic news. No, they should not reach out to their previous listing agent to get a copy of one. If that listing agent, again, didn't provide that to them prior to the expiration or cancellation of the listing, they have no exclusions period protection. Okay. All right, section F2, seller warrants that seller has no obligation to pay commission to any other broker regarding the property unless property is transferred to any of the following individuals or entities. So if your seller says, yes, they did give me an exclusions list, I'd say, great, may I please have a copy? And I would say in F2, see attached exclusions list from previous listing, okay? And attach it to it. That is the truly ethical, legitimate way to do this. You know, if you conveniently forget to ask, or you didn't know it was previously listed, can you get in trouble for that? No, but I mean, you know, your reputation follows you around a long time in this business. So you're going to want to do things as right as you can. All right, section 4, items excluded and included. So this is a really important conversation to have with your seller when you're taking a listing agreement. The reason for this is because if you don't have this conversation, you might have some really big problems, okay? Items that should be included with the home are permanently affixed. So that means a television mount, but not a TV. This means, yeah, all the light fixtures, but not lamps, right? They're not permanently affixed. Now, if you're ever in doubt, people are like, well, curtain rods are permanently affixed, but curtains aren't. If you're ever in doubt, just write it. Just write it very clearly. Now, no matter what the seller tells you or what you write in this agreement, it does not hold to the buyer unless it's also in the residential purchase agreement. So you can have it in your listing agreement. You can have it in the MLS. You can tell the buyer and their buyer's agent, but if it is not in the purchase agreement, that is not the case. It doesn't matter what you said if it's not in the purchase agreement. The reason it's in the listing agreement is so that you know, so that you can market the property appropriately, so that you can inform potential buyers properly, so you can protect your seller's needs and wants. If you fail to do this, you can end up with a situation where a seller takes a chandelier that is worth 20 grand because it was sentimental to them, and now the buyer moves in, your closed escrow, huge problem. Dining room has a gaping hole and no light fixture. Who do you think they're going to come after for that? Agent's going to go after you. You're going to go to your seller, and your seller is going to be like, I'm not giving that to you. You can buy one. And then you're going to be buying a light fixture. Have fun with that. Okay. So, and the buyer is still not going to be happy, and that agent's going to think you're an idiot. Okay. So when in doubt, just be clear and over explain, over include or exclude, right? I don't think you're an idiot if you tell me that you want the light fixtures included. I think you're an idiot if I'm the buyer's agent and I close escrow and there's no fucking light fixture when we walk in. Okay, on the day we close. So always better to cover more and be clearer than not. Yes.
The two most common problems is the light fixtures and the curtains, right?
Curtains are negotiable. Just be clear. Just write it into your contract, listing and purchase contract. The one that I see and it's new on the new RPA, although it's not on the new construction RPA, and I know because I have a problem with it myself right now, is mirrors in bathrooms that aren't permanently affixed. In the new purchase contract, I think it's automatically checked that they're going to stay, because this is a big, like, all buyers assume these mirrors over the, bathroom sink are going to stay, but it doesn't necessarily actually meet the definition of a permanently affixed mirror, right? If a medicine cabinet is built in with the mirror, that's permanently affixed. A mirror that's just stuck on the wall, but they assume it's going to be there. And so that is new on the new version of our residential purchase agreement. That is the one I see the biggest problem with these days. And Jesse and I are having this problem now. We sold new construction. The sellers just informed us that the mirrors in the bathrooms are actually staging, and we're like, oh, thanks for being the biggest cheapskates ever. And we're going to probably be buying some bathroom mirrors for our clients because we don't even want to tell them. We're going to just buy it from a staging company, right? I don't like doing that. My fault. But we have brand new contracts, and I made a huge error. I assumed that our new construction contract, just like in our previous versions, mirrored heavily the terms within our regular residential purchase agreement. Not the case. It didn't have an inclusions and exclusions section. I didn't even think about it. It didn't have mirrors labeled there that I thought was so super smart on our new residential purchase agreement. Whose fault is that? Mine. Why do you think I'm buying stuff? It's my fault. I don't have to, but buyer's not going to be very happy, and they're going to think I'm incompetent, and I made a mistake. I'm going to buy it and not tell them. Yeah, but those mirrors aren't cheap. I think Jesse was telling me 700, 1400. We're talking about thousands of dollars right now. Hurts. It hurts my soul. And that's just because I didn't read as much as I could. Yeah.
What should you have done included in the?
If I had been a little more diligent, I would have compared the new construction purchase agreement to the residential purchase agreement, noticed that difference, and written it into the contract myself under other terms. Yep, but I made a mistake.
So does that mean that even at open houses, most of the stuff there are going with the property or no?
No. Personal property doesn't get included with real estate sales for the most part. And the reason for that is simply a lender is not in the business of lending on personal property. So most buyers are buying with loans. Usually a personal property agreement is separate outside of your escrow.
Why would you not tell the buyer that?
Because I don't want them to know that I fucked up. It's my fault. They want those mirrors. I thought it was covered. It wasn't, and I didn't check.
Did they ask you if it's covered?
Yeah.
And you said yes?
I said it's negotiable.
So you're not at fault.
Yeah, I am. I didn't check. Now, do I think that the buyer has legal recourse against me if I didn't buy the mirrors? No, but what do I want? I want my client to be happy and I want their business and I want referral. Right? And I don't want to cause them stress.
Okay.
Yeah, so business decision. Okay. So important for you as listing agent so that you know what to include or exclude. Very strange example of an inclusion. I sold a condo that was townhouse style with a rooftop deck once. And the sellers took me out there, beautiful view. They had gorgeous patio furniture and they're like, this has to stay. They were moving into a house. I was like, why? It's gorgeous. Must have been expensive. And they're like, oh, it was, and we love it. But the doorway up to the rooftop deck is too narrow. We could not move the patio furniture and we couldn't return it. We could not get it up to a rooftop deck through this doorway. So we had to pay thousands of dollars to have it craned in. We're not paying thousands of dollars to have it craned out. So I had to include it, but I also had to disclose to, potential buyers, look, you can't take it in or out. Me, I'm kind of cheap. I would have taken a hacksaw and a drill and a jug of vodka up and been like, does anyone want to break shit with me? But, but that's to get it out. Getting it in, obviously you can't break it. So there are also weird inclusions. Yes.
They also have a company where they'll come in, if your couch doesn't fit in or out, they'll come in and cut your couch in half and then put it back together. And if even people with thousands of dollars for the couch, they'll cut it and then put it back together as if nothing happened. Just in case you're working with a condo or something weird.
Please, I work in development a lot of times and I'm constantly trying to restore stuff that I fuck up in my own house. Please give me that info. I'd love to have a high-end repair person on call for that kind of stuff. Let's see. Leased or not owned items. So sometimes your client, they don't own something that's permanently affixed to the property. Conundrum, right? That's supposed to go with the property. Most common would be a solar panel system. Sometimes the sellers own them outright. Sometimes they're leased. Sometimes they're liened. Sometimes there's really messed up terms between the solar company and the seller where it's not transferable. They have to pay off, unless there's been a certain amount of time, they have to pay off an exorbitant amount of money in order to own it so that they can transfer it to the buyer. It's not an option to have it removed. This stuff is recorded on title, just like a loan is. It's very complicated. Even if everyone's in agreement, you have to get dollar amounts. Everyone has to know what the terms of the agreement are. If it is going to be transferred to the new buyer, they have to agree to that. It has to be reconveyed with the title company and then again recorded on the new title policy if they're assuming versus a seller paying off. I've actually seen instances where the seller cannot sell their home because the solar panel company wants $100+ grand in order to pay it off. Okay. So if you're going for a listing where they have liened items, leased items that they don't own, what should you do right away before you actually put it on the MLS or take photos or spend any money? Get a copy of that contract. Yeah. Find out what the deal is. Can your seller sell? Worst thing that would ever happen is you do your entire job, end up in escrow, ready to close, and can't do it.
It's like common sense, no? You have to
You'd think it's common sense, but I mean, these are questions, and this is why it's in the contract. It's a reminder for us as agents, have this conversation with your seller, because would you necessarily see a solar panel by walking up to a house? Not necessarily, right? So no matter what you see, ask your client, do you have solar panels? Next question is, if they say yes, what? Do you own them? Exactly. If not, okay, probably not an issue. Do you have a copy of the contract? Let's take a look at it right now. Yes.
You're saying if the previous owner leased the solar from Tesla, with the Tesla company, you cannot transfer it? Is that what you're saying, or just research?
Every contract is going to be different. Yeah, it's rare that I run into issues like that. And most of the time it's stuff that I see on the MLS, these poor sellers, agent remarks is like, buyer must pay off balance of leased solar panels in the amount of $125,000, And what does that mean? That means fewer buyers. Buyers got to come in with tons of cash. They can't, a lender's not going to pay for that. Lender's only paying for the property, right? It just gets very complicated. I know there have been a lot of lawsuits against these, you know, predatory companies that go after generally like older people or people who, you know, don't understand contracts very well, and do this sort of thing. There are other types of items that are leased or liened, particularly with income property. So units, okay, a lot of times you'll see like laundry units in communal areas that are leased or liened. Okay, so it's not just solar panels. You can ask them if there's anything leased or liened. If your client ever is like, oh yeah, I have a great water filtration or softener system, is it owned? Right away, I'm like, is it owned? Okay, good. And then they're like, we paid $15,000 for it, so you can up the price by $15,000. I'm like, no, honey, that's not how it works. Buyer's not going to pay $15,000 more for your house because of a water softener. Let's see, multiple listing service. Okay, so we all have the MLS, right? Did you know that in the state of California, there are dozens and dozens of MLSs? Okay, so it's governed by our board, right? So ours is Greater Los Angeles Area Association of Realtors. And most MLSs cooperate together. And what does that mean? It means that they share information. So we can see listings from like the Valley has their own MLS, right? We have no problem cross-seeing those. But not every MLS in the state of California cooperates. So there will be areas that you don't actually have access to if you're a member of this board. And why is that important? That's important because it's very unethical for you to try to sell a property in which you enter the property on the MLS, but no agent in that area is actually going to see that property, right? I'll give you an example. I had a client who he sold his house. He wanted to buy in an area called Lone Pine, which is near Bishop on the way to Mammoth. And he was like, can you just pull me? He's like, I don't expect you to drive up there or anything, but can you pull me a list of what's for sale up there? So I said, sure, no problem. There's nothing in Lone Pine at all. So I knew there had to be a problem, right? So I called up the MLS and they're like, oh, that MLS doesn't cooperate with ours, right? So I was just like, here's a referral agent who can help you. Good luck. But as a listing agent, it's not ethical for me to list a property where the agents in the area where that property is aren't going to see it. So I have a couple of options. I can co-list, I can refer, or I can also join that board and pay some money. Okay. Most of those areas are going to be far away though, so you're probably going to do a crummy job anyway. So ethically, it's probably not the best idea. But you know, you have a couple of options. So here, what is Broker's MLS? Ours is called CLAW, Combined Los Angeles and West Side, CLAW, all caps. Okay. Now, we just talked about primary MLS and cooperating MLS, right? So if I'm selling a property in the Valley, do I have to check this box? Yeah, I do. Because my MLS is not the primary MLS, but is it still ethical for me to list this property? 100%, because all of the agents in that area where the property is located can still see it without any problem. Yes.
Orange County was the same way as the Valley or no?
Orange County has their own MLS. South Bay has their own MLS. You know, who
Is it
you,
the same as the Valley that people want to say something on the-
yeah, they all cooperate.
Cooperate?
Yeah, there's a list of it somewhere. If you called the MLS help desk or looked around or even Googled like California cooperating MLSs, you should be able to find it. I found it when I had that problem with the Lone Pine property, you know, like I Googled around about it after that because I was very curious what areas don't cooperate with my MLS. And it's very few, but there are also a couple of significant ones. Okay. Opting out of the MLS. What's that? CLAW. Unless you belong to a different board. On a rare occasion, someone will belong to like the Malibu board or something. Let's see. Opting out of the MLS. So opting out of the MLS means what? It's a pocket listing. Okay. So whether or not the client is opting out of the MLS, and they might just for our secret, you know, our secret way of taking our listing active right away that I taught you about, they might or might not, whether they do it or not, they need to initial here. So do you. This is not an initial if you're opting to do this. You're initialing this in the hopes that if you are opting out of the MLS, you're telling your seller what that means for them. Hmm?
Is that like
Off market, pocket listing? Yeah. And what does that mean? It means they're not going to get exposed to the public. Okay. It means they're not going to get exposed to the public. So very rarely is this in the best interest of a seller. The only time a seller might want to do this is if they're a really high profile person. Okay. And even then, not as often. They generally have layers of protection through a business manager and trustee and signers. Yes.
So it's a little bit tough for us to sell those, right? Because then we don't have access.
Yeah, it's tough to sell a pocket listing.
Yeah, and then are those the ones that we have to put like on our website, exclusive listings? You know, how we have MLS listings and then we have exclusive listings. That's like pocket listing.
Exclusive listing means it's a signed listing agreement. If you have a pocket listing, you are not actually able to market it to the public directly.
Maybe on our website.
Specifically not on website or social media. So if I have a pocket listing, I cannot put it on Instagram. I cannot put it on my website. What I can do is I can tell you about it. Only you at my brokerage, or we have an umbrella company, thankfully for us. We have 14 offices and we have a closed membership social media group for what's called Forward Living. That includes those 14 offices where we can post our pocket listings.
What is it called?
Hold on, I have 3 questions. We'll go this way.
Only Keller Williams, if you have a pocket listing.
Not all Keller Williams. Keller Williams are independently owned and operated. We have an umbrella company called Forward Living. So there's some sort of little bit of a loophole there where we're able to with 14 offices. So if you search like Facebook for KW Forward Living or something like that, I'm a member of it. So if you looked me up on Facebook and looked at my friends and typed in Forward, you would find the group. You have to submit for approval. They're going to verify that you're actually an agent at Keller Williams, and then they'll approve your membership to that group. That way we're legitimately following the rules of how you can legally advertise pocket listings.
So that's
Hold on. There was another question here. Yeah.
Is off market the same as pocket? Or
Yes. Off market and pocket listings are the same.
So I see agents put off market on like Facebook and everything. Is that wrong?
Yes, it is.
They do like.
Yes, I know.
constantly. Is the office going to get into trouble?
Most of the time when there's a violation, your governing board or MLS generally just ask you to take it down. And a lot of agents, not necessarily in this instance, myself included though, I know I'm doing something a little wrong sometimes. Like I purposely labeled the property in a different MLS area than it legally is per our MLS area map. It was right on the border of West Hollywood and Hollywood. And it was a nice little street. It didn't deserve to get lumped in with gross, the gross area during the pandemic where it got so bad. I thought it was really going to hurt my seller. So did I get caught? 100%. What did I do? I waited till the last second and changed it on the time frame they gave me to change it. But by that time I had offers, so that was good. Okay, what was the next question here?
You said Forward Living?
Forward Living. Yeah, Forward Living is our umbrella company. So if you actually went on the California Department of Real Estate and you look up your licensure, you'll actually see that your broker of record, it doesn't say Keller Williams Beverly Hills. We have a DBA of Keller Williams Beverly Hills. It says Forward Living.
Kristen,
Yes.
in an umbrella group, also because it's a pocket listing, also the other agents can approach to our sellers, right?
No, if
can
you have
do
a
it.
pocket listing, that's actually a pocket listing, you have a signed listing agreement with an SELM. Or a single party agreement at the very least. If you don't have a single party or a listing agreement signed by that seller, you do not have a pocket or an off market. What you have is a listing lead that you can share.
Okay.
You are basically trying to entice other agents and buyers so that you can secure the seller's business, which is a very risky way to do business. Yes.
Do you approach them in the same exact way, like if the property is listing way higher than what you think
No.
it would sell for?
We can talk about that after. Yeah. If I felt like I needed to work with that seller for some reason, I might ask them if we can try it off market for a little while first to get feedback on the price and all that. Okay. Back to the listing agreement, guys. So clear cooperation policy. MLS rules require that residential real property for 1 to 4 units of vacant lots be submitted to the MLS. Oh, I was wrong. Within 1 business day. It's 1 business day though. I said 2. Yeah, I thought it was 2 or 3. I do think that it used to be longer. So 1 business day.
That's all property.
All properties unless you have an SELM signed.
Okay.
And this is in direct conflict with us properly preparing to market a property correctly for our listing launch, right? We need professional photos. You're not getting those same day by any photographer you want shooting your listing. I'll tell you that right now.
So you would just post without a photo temporarily?
Nope, I would never do that. I would take my listing, active as of the day it was signed, get an SELM, schedule my appointments, prepare my listing for a proper launch, sign a modification of listing, deleting the SELM, and starting my listing period as of the date I was ready to put it on the MLS. That way it shows 0 days on market and every photo is prepared and everything is beautifully laid out and ready to sell. Yes.
So you're saying delete it from opportunities?
No.
You're uploading. the
No, you don't
SEO.
delete it from opportunities. You would still have the SELM in there. You're just also going to add a custom field within the same transaction that says modification of listing, and you're going to upload the modification of listing there
So
and
what's
submit
the
that to the broker.
price?
Yeah, you don't actually physically get rid of anything you delete. You're deleting its application to your contract terms. But you still have to have record of it existing in order to modify it by deleting it, right? There has to be a paper trail.
Okay.
Kristen, does the seller have to sign that modification, or
Yes.
is it just?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. You're modifying something that is a contractual agreement between you and your client, 100%. And that's another thing, like people do price reductions, the seller agrees to it, but they don't get anything in writing. Guys, anything you change that's a listing term has to be signed off on, and there is a form for that, and it is not legitimate. You're gonna get yourself in a lot of trouble if you change anything without having a signed agreement in writing about what it is you're changing from your original terms.
So even if in your additional terms, you put after 3 months, we don't get any offers, you're gonna reduce it to this price. You still have
Sometimes if I can get
some-
away with it with the seller, I will introduce a clause that hopefully has a pre-negotiated price reduction at a certain time frame. But most sellers that are not being reasonable about price aren't necessarily going to be reasonable about that either.
Yeah, but if that's already in the listing agreement, you don't have to make.
No,
the
you would
modification?
you still need to make the modification. Yeah, you still need to make the modification. Let's see. Is it hot in here? It's
Yeah.
really hot, right? Should we open some doors? So there's a lot of verbiage also I don't cover in here because it's just language that is supporting the concepts I'm telling you, or a lot of it's definitions, or it's stuff that doesn't necessarily apply. So even if I don't cover something, it doesn't mean you shouldn't read it. Your clients might read every word, so you should be familiar with every word as well. Okay, just want to let you guys know that. Coming soon, we talked a little bit about that earlier. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan. So coming soon means that you can put it on the MLS before it's actually available to be sold. And this means I can have a listing agreement that starts on the 10th, and yet I could put it on the MLS on the 1st, right? And this is to create hype, but I think it's also a great way to, engage in unethical behavior knowingly or unknowingly. I also think it's a great way to frustrate people. And there's, something to be said about momentum when you launch a listing. So if you have coming soon and a bunch of buyers are like, oh, this is amazing, I want to go see this, I want to write an offer, and yet you can't really accept anything because coming soon happens before the start of your listing period. You can't accept an offer before your listing period begins because then your commission is not secured, right? Talk about a little flurry of paperwork to cover your ass. But, what if those buyers forget about the property because they can't see it, they can't make an offer, they can't get an offer accepted? What happens if they go on vacation? There's just something to be said about properly placing a listing on the market and making sure everyone has as much access to see it within the, the beginning time frame of that listing. Do it right. This is not so you can make more commission. This is so you can get your seller the highest price, the best terms. How can you do that if you're not operating in their best interest? You cannot. Okay, it's in their best interest to have the most eyes on it, the most access to the property, and the most offers, right? That's always in their best interest, yeah?
Right, so those 20 days that, you know, let's say you took the listing on the 10th and you're gonna list it on the 1st. Those 20 days you bring buyers, do you? I mean, what would
I
what
might
would
tell
those
people in
20
the
days?
office about it. And here's the thing. I just asked my seller if that's okay. Because it might save them money as far as staging or other repair work or, you know, things that they're doing during that time. But I have to be very careful, you know, as a listing agent, I have to be honest with my seller and say, well, you know, I can shop it to the people in my brokerage before we go on the MLS, but most likely for you to get the best terms, it needs to be publicly viewed. It needs to be publicly listed, available for viewing. However, you know, I've also already typically discussed best and worst case scenario as far as what I think value is. And so, you know, if someone in my brokerage wants to come in and offer significantly higher than I think the property's worth, and I truly believe that that is an incredible offer, I'm going to tell my seller that. You know, but if it's a good offer, you know, it's up to my seller. It's a good offer, seller, but we might get better if we go on the market. It's up to you. I have to do that. That's my obligation as a listing agent, right?
What's an average time between listing and getting the photos and everything ready?
Depends.
About a
I
week?
mean, if something needs to be painted and needs repair work and then photos afterwards, and then there's a holiday, you know, you don't want to launch a listing right before a holiday or right after a holiday. And I'm a little superstitious with mine. So statistically, listings that are listed on Thursdays and Fridays typically sell faster and for higher prices. I like Thursdays because Fridays, you know, like if it goes out on a Friday, it's annoying to all the agents. Their clients see it at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on Friday, and then we have to work Friday night. So I think that's kind of mean. So I like to launch mine on Thursday afternoons. That gives enough time for people to see it and to get showing scheduled and all of that. But yeah, there's no set period because you don't have control over how long things are going to take, or the people who are providing you services to prepare, you don't have control over their schedule either. Things always go wrong, right? Things always get delayed, things always get changed around. And then, you know, maybe your client doesn't feel well one day. It is what it is. All you can do is best plan. All you can do is best plan. And most of real estate is like that, you know, so one factor affects another factor, affects another factor. All you can do is try to knock one out and then move on to the next. That's all you can do. There's no linear, it's not a linear path in real estate. And those of you who, you know, are mentees and come in and meet with me, I always use the analogy, real estate is like a pinball machine. You only get the full picture after you've been back and forth and up and down multiple times. It doesn't go 1, 2, 3. And that's okay. You just bounce around a bit. You'll get there. Yeah.
You said don't launch listing before or after holidays.
I mean, if
Well-
your client insists, but it's
So let's say
bad.
after Christmas and New Year's Eve, that's not a good time to start in January?
Nope. And there was someone in this office, and I don't remember who, but I wouldn't say who, even if I did. They were asking me about why their listings weren't getting showings. It's like, well, when did you put them on the market? December 22nd. I was like, oh, that was stupid. Take them off and put them back on, you know, after the second week of January.
After when?
Second week of January. People are, you know, they're in vacation mode, then they're backed up with work, they're tired, they need some downtime after spending, you know, time traveling with the family, you know, they need time to get their ducks in order. Maybe it was their New Year's resolution to buy a house, okay? Do you think, pre-qualification is going to happen on January 2nd? Probably not, okay? Some people, you know, I don't know, you want the most buyers to see it. For the most buyers to see it, most buyers need to be physically available to view a property, not distracted and actually looking at their email and the new listings that come out and things like that. So they're all considerations. Yeah, so you see these MLS listings that get put on the market on Sunday night at 1 a.m. Idiots, idiot listing agents. How bad for the seller. You think that most buyers Monday morning are going to be looking at their listing email? No, they're going to be looking at their boss's 25 emails, their clients freaking out from the weekend. They're going to have the Mondays. Not the best time, you know, not the best time. All right. So, all right, we talked about car form SELM at length many times today. Anytime you're not putting on MLS, Within 1 business day of listing period beginning, you need this document. Whether you truly mean for it to be a pocket listing, or if you just want it there for the time that you're actually preparing to launch your listing properly. SELM, okay, seller instruction to exclude, excuse me, seller instruction to exclude from the multiple listing service. Sell them, SELM. Probably not going to sell them the best or fastest if you use an SELM, long term. Okay, so the way it's written is that if you have an SELM, you don't market the property until a certain date, or option 2, seller instructs broker not to market the property to the public at all for the entirety of the listing period. I like to make it easy for myself because really the only time I'm using this is that interim time while I'm preparing. I just select option 2 and then I use that modification of listing to delete it entirely. Let's see. Oh, so if you check this, oh,
Christine, excuse me, what do you put on D1? I'm sorry, I missed that part. Seller instruct broker MLS require SELM. You put 1 day after you put on MLS?
no, I put it here.
So you leave, so you
I
leave
say
that
the
one back?
entirety of the agreement and then I just delete it when I'm ready to put it on the MLS.
Mm,
I delete it by using a modification of listing.
okay.
Kristen, if you, in that interim period, if you, so you select option 2, and then in that period, you happen to reach out to someone in the office and they do, they give you an offer that's like, okay, it's a really good offer.
That's
And
fine.
the
You still
seller
have a valid
accepts.
listing. What does it say here?
Sure.
Not to market to the public. So you're
Right,
100%
right.
able to do whatever you want otherwise.
But then after that, do you then cancel, like what, do you cancel the listing agreement? Do you cancel, or not the listing agreement, do you
No.
cancel the SELM, or how do you handle that?
No, I handle it the same way. I use the modification of listing. I delete the SELM in its entirety as of that date.
And then do you need to, so you don't need to put it on the MLS at that point, right? Because it's
No,
not,
but
you don't need to go live.
want to.
Oh, just to get the, okay, gotcha, get the credit
I
for it,
would
right,
want
right.
Not only do I want the credit for it, I might want to secure a backup a backup buyer for my seller. How can I do that unless anyone else knows about it? Excuse me. And I want buyers to call me because they like my pretty new listing and maybe they'll work with me as well. So there's just multiple reasons and benefits to both the seller and myself to put it on the MLS, even if I've already secured an offer during my off market period. And it's helpful to your peers, your industry peers. Why? It's a sales comp that otherwise wouldn't be available on the MLS with photos. It would just be available if someone contacted a title rep for off market sales, and then not a very good comp, even if it was a perfect comp, because I can't see what it looks like. So I can't make that judgment call if I'm trying to use that sale number as a comp. So you're helping everyone, I think, a little bit by actually still entering that off market sale into the MLS. Now, the seller might not want you to. If you have a true seller who's doing it for reasons of privacy, they probably don't want it on the MLS. Yes.
Do you get more calls from agents or from buyers?
What's that?
Do you get more calls from agents or from?
Typically agents, but in this market where it's tough for buyers to secure property, a lot of them try to cut out and go direct to the listing agent. So you get a lot of both. Also, as a listing agent, I want potential future sellers to be able to look up my sales easily. The more times my name is on the internet associated with a successful closing, better for my career, right? Okay. Let's see. Clear cooperation policy does not apply. Page 3. Okay. Huh? Page 3 of the residential listing agreement, section 7F. Okay, so clear cooperation policy means basically you're not trying to market the property to the public or any other brokerage. Do we do that? It can be done, but I don't think Keller Williams would allow that. So we're never doing this. Okay, we have to cooperate with buyer's agents. Okay. If you take a listing and you have a buyer, but that writes an offer on your listing, but other agents bring offers to you as well, you have to show them all, right? If they're better than yours, You have to tell your seller that, right? Yeah. Clear cooperation. Cooperation is very much needed to be an ethical agent and do the best job for our client. Okay, and to protect the public. All right. So some sellers are really weird about privacy. They don't want the sale price of their home or details to be public. There's no way for that to be the case anymore. There used to be some ways we could minimize it. It's no longer the case. It's public record. Anything that's on the MLS is always going to be on the MLS. You can't go back and delete it. You can go back and have photos deleted after you close. And sometimes people want that. What else? If you opt out of, you know, when you enter a new listing into the MLS, there's options to opt out of certain websites like Redfin, Zillow, not allow estimates by these models. But you really need to make sure, and while that sounds great, right? That sounds great. Zillow and Redfin can't, you know, rebroadcast my listings to people. They can't promote other agents whose listing it isn't and say, you know, interested in this property, tour it, and it goes to some other agent that's paying them money. Estimates are always fucked up, always not in your favor. I'd like to avoid that if at all possible. But there's a really big downside. It sounds great, but there's a really big downside. If you opt out of any of this, it's not going to be on there. And what does that mean? Less exposure for your seller, which means most likely not as best chances for obtaining best terms and highest price. Okay, so make sure that you and your seller are clear. If they're like, oh, this sounds interesting, I'd love to avoid his estimate, or I'd love to avoid, you know, this situation. You're avoiding the exposure altogether. It's not just the situation. Okay, so opting out of these can be really detrimental to sellers' ultimate goals. That includes this section, the automated estimate of value. Okay, broker and seller responsibilities. Okay, so basically, it is your job to, you know, you are legally required to do your best to competently sell the property at the terms the seller would like you to sell them. Okay. Similarly, the seller is actually legally obligated to sell the property if you obtain an offer for them at the terms that they've expressed to you that they want. Okay. Do we ever force that issue? No. Good luck with trying to get a seller to actually perform and close on something they've changed their mind on selling. Oh, that's another thing, guys.
You get your commission?
Yes, after a lot of hurt feelings, a hurt reputation, and a long drawn out legal battle, and probably not all of it. But technically, yes. Is that once a seller enters escrow, they have almost no way to cancel a deal unless the buyer just fails to perform. So let's say they lost their job, or I had a personal instance once. I listed a home. My seller had just gotten engaged, took a new job out of state where his fiance lived. She broke up with him during the escrow. He no longer wanted to sell his condo. He did not cooperate. He did things like throw needles on the floor, dead rats. I don't know where he found these things. Like, he really tried to sabotage the sale. The buyers ended up buying though. You know, they had an attorney involved and wrote some pretty nasty letters. And I told my seller, I'm like, look, unless the buyers fail to perform, you have to. You are in breach of contract. The court is going to force you to sell it anyways. You're going to have to pay them damages and their legal fees. There is no way for you to get out of this. So I just want you to be aware as agents. And so you can answer this question correctly. You know, if a seller's like, oh, what if I change my mind or something's not right? No, once they enter contract with the buyer, unless the buyer fails to perform, and even then everyone has to agree to go ahead and cancel something. It's not automatic. Seller doesn't have a right to cancel. So real estate contracts are very, very buyer centric. So be careful. Yes.
I mean, people pay people off.
Yes, I have seen instances where a seller pays a buyer to go away. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a case where also you would urge the person, the seller, to contact an attorney?
Oh yeah, anytime anyone gets we are not attorneys, so anytime anyone wants to get into a complicated situation or a legal battle, 100% they should contact an attorney.
That you would advise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
During middle of escrow and the seller files bankruptcy, is your contract void? He doesn't have to sell to you, or you have any opportunity?
They can't. I don't know if it voids it by legal definition, but you can't actually close the sale. Title won't close the sale, so it's not going to sell. But you know, the seller probably knew that they were in default, and part of a listing agreement and contract is the seller makes representation that there's no legal claim on this house. They have the authority to sell it. So if we're talking just black and white without any negotiation, technically the buyer can sue. Good luck. If the seller's in bankruptcy,
Yeah,
what fucking money do they have? And they can't get the house. So cut your losses, take your deposit and go home. Yeah, go find something else, move on. Okay, so section 10C2, this is a relatively new change, okay? So part of, you know, pandemic was we got really, really sensitive, more sensitive to social issues, which I think is a good thing. But in Los Angeles, I'm not sure that we have as many issues, at least in real estate and higher end real estate, with these sensitivities as other areas. So it's not illegal, but the board and the state has advised us that they would like to discourage what we often refer to as love letters to the seller, which is a personally written letter from a buyer making an offer to the seller, basically telling them how cute they are, how cute their family and their pets are, what they do, why they're good buyers, why they love their house, and how lovingly they're going to take care of it and have their dream life there if they get to buy it, right? And that's great. But now in the listing agreement, we actually have a term where the seller gets to decide if we should present those letters to them or not. You know, the big concern is that, oh, a seller might discriminate against a buyer based upon what they hear or see in a letter. That might happen. If you're a good agent, you make sure that doesn't happen, at least as far as what they write in the letter. You know, so I'll give you an example. I had someone who was like, you know, and everyone knows I'm like the most liberal as far as it goes to these things. Her longtime boyfriend was not her husband or her fiance. She called him her partner. And I said, I think we should take that word out. And she said, why? And I said, well, we don't want to use words that might make anyone have an inclination as to your sexual orientation. It's none of their business, right? You know, you said you want to start a family here. Let's avoid labels altogether. We are looking to start a family here. That's fine. They don't need to know anything other than that. The message is received just the same. We versus my partner and I. You know, my girlfriend and I, my husband and I, my side thing and I, right? It doesn't matter. It's none of their business, you know? Or a lot of my Jewish clients, it's none of anyone's business. It's just names. Doesn't matter. I'm not taking, if I ever get married, I'm not taking my husband's name. I'm a business person. Doesn't mean I'm married or not married, right? If we have the same last name. We're LA, come on, get woke.
You're gonna like kind of like mess up your father's name with your last name. You're not gonna keep the heritage.
I'm adopted anyways.
You're gonna lose your.
I'm adopted anyways.
Oh yeah.
And everyone knows I love my daddy.
Okay.
And he will never be lost. Besides, my man has the same name as him, so it doesn't matter.
Marry someone and change the last name. You will lose that history.
Maybe, I mean, if I had children, I'd still hyphenate it, but what does it matter? It's none of our business. See, you're doing exactly what I want a seller to avoid doing, is judge the buyers based on what's in their letter. None of that. We want to avoid that.
But do sellers go to the extent of like stalking?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. All I'm saying is now what the change was, why it was discouraged, what, you know, what you can do to avoid the issues that might actually cause discrimination by being a better agent and helping a buyer to write a better letter. But there's actually a term in the contract that where the seller says, yes, show me the letters or don't. I still like letters. I still like letters. If it's my listing, I still like letters. The buyer put the time in, the extra time, indication that they're more serious, more likely to close. Also, you know, in my experience, I'm very fortunate maybe, or maybe I am completely naive, but the clients I've worked with I haven't seen any discrimination. If anything, I've seen like them being touched by things. I think it's very sweet. But it's just that extra step. And you know, it's just that extra time, that extra step, the extra energy. Show seriousness. But I think it's sweet. And I have a worthless English degree, except for that buyer letter. So it really helps me out. So I like it when sellers actually look at the letters I write with my clients. I think it helps. But I wouldn't just let your client write a letter and send it. And when you're writing an offer, guys, ask your listing agent if it's okay to submit a buyer letter. Don't just do it. Okay, don't just do it. Because they have this term in the listing agreement and it has been decided if they can do it or not. Okay, let's see, investigation and reports. On a very rare occasion, I might ask a seller to do an inspection before I go on market. If I see a huge blatant problem that I think is going to come up in any escrow I have. Why? Because I want to get facts and potentially repair it ahead of time, or at least have numbers and estimates that I trust. Before I get under contract, I can disclose this up front, protect my seller's purchase price, and hopefully avoid unnecessary cancellations. Okay, but I'm only doing this if I see a blatant issue. You know, I'm only saying, seller, I want you to get a termite inspection or a pre-listing inspection. If I see major things that really concern me to my blind eye, you know, I see a lot of unevenness. I think there might be structural or foundation issues. I see tons of wood damage. So I think we should get a termite inspector out there. You know, I see tons of water damage. So, you know, let's get a mold inspection so our buyer doesn't take us to the cleaner and hold us hostage and then cancel on us and give us stigma and more days on market and fuck up your price. Let's fix it now, or at least get information we can trust and we can present ahead of time. Okay.
You don't have to disclose it to the next.
Yeah, you have to disclose it.
Well,
But I'd prefer to disclose it as a past defect that's been repaired. And here's the documentation to prove it. Yeah. Yes, the roof needs replacement, definitely. I've received 2 estimates. Here you are. Please write your offer with that consideration. Yeah. You know, that being reflected, that consideration being reflected in your offer price. But even if I want my seller to do pre-listing reports or inspections, I probably still don't contractually bind them to do it within a time frame. What am I gonna do? Put a gun to my seller's head and make it contentious? Like, you have to do this within a certain time? No. We don't put it on the market till we figure it out. If you tell them why, they're gonna want to do it if they can. Sometimes you run into a seller that just doesn't have any money. At a bare minimum, at least you can get estimates since you have a better idea. Okay. Yeah, none of this that we need to go over. 13, there's nothing to check, but this is a really big consideration to have with your clients. It's a great time to have this discussion. Hey, sellers, hopefully we have amazing open houses and showings. I will do my best to be vigilant and watch everyone, but that will likely not always be the case that I can have my eyes on everyone at all times. I hope you have such a popular listing that's impossible. So with that being said, I want to make sure that you remove and secure any valuables you have, prescription drugs, things you wouldn't think of, like extra sets of keys that might be hanging up somewhere or in baskets, right? Also, if there is any security on the property and the public is going to enter, you do need to post a sign that informs them that they're going to be recorded, audio or video recording, okay? I don't mean for like a ring outside, I mean once they enter the premises, okay? You don't have to obtain permission or anything, but you do have to have a post. And even if there is no surveillance equipment, myself as you know, a female agent, I feel a lot safer. I just ask my sellers if I have their permission. I post a big ass sign out front that says the property's under major, you know, surveillance. I have had weird, scary instances twice. And I have never had one if I had that sign up. So, you know, bad stuff does happen to men and women. But yeah, that's a really good idea and necessary if there is actually surveillance. Also, it says insurance here. You want to sound way smarter than any other listing agent you're up against? It only applies if the property is going to be vacant during the listing period. But homeowners insurance oftentimes has what's called a vacancy clause, where they will not actually cover anything if the property is not being occupied, if it's vacant. So you might want to ask your seller if they're really concerned about it. I don't know if I'd go into it unless I was really concerned about issues, or if it was really high end, you know, a vacancy clause, or maybe something that's in the hills where fires can happen, you know, so just say, oh, might want to check with your insurance company since it's vacant now. that they'll actually, they don't have a vacancy clause, that they're going to cover you, though the property's not being occupied. Okay, photographs and internet advertising. People are going to come in and take video and photos. So are you. If your seller doesn't want them, you can check a box here. And then you have to tell everyone and anyone like 5 times that they cannot take photos or videos. And that's going to be hard for you to sell the property anyways. I've never seen a seller that was like no photos.
So
I mean, at all, like even as a listing agent, I can't take a photo.
Oh.
Yeah.
so if a buyer comes in and wants to take a video or some pictures, would you tell them no?
No, go for it. My sellers don't opt for this. I tell them that's dumb. You want everyone to see your property. Yeah. Please repost. If you ever see my stuff, guys, you are more than welcome to repost the hell out of it. You don't even have to give me credit on it. Please post my listings. Please post my sales. Yes, all day long. Key safe lockbox. Okay, so the way that the contract is written is that the seller will allow you to install a lockbox or key safe, which is a super box. That's not very industry standard for us here, though. We don't work with a lot of lockboxes. Okay. It's not industry standard in our area, probably because of the higher prices we have associated. We also have one of the most sophisticated, fussy, complicated clientele and markets, even compared to like the Valley or the South Bay. They're all on lockbox, all of them down there. I don't think it matters if it's a lease or a sale. It matters how your seller feels about it. However, this means for any reason. So I always do have a lockbox at my listings, but it's only there for my team agents to access. I tell my seller, hey, I can either make 5 copies of your house key, or I can make 1, keep 1 on my key ring and put 1 in the lockbox that's hidden in the backyard that only the team agents know about and can access. Up to you. So you, just because this is checked or not checked, you know, you still need to make it clear, what is that lockbox being used for? We don't do a lot of unaccompanied showings in this area. And that's primarily, I think, because of the expectation of our services in a higher end price range. Also, if the property is, you know, owner occupied and it's on lockbox, you know, there's some iffiness as to what if someone steals something, right? Safety issues, people violating and barging in, you know, violating your seller's privacy, that kind of thing. There are additional security measures for lockboxes, like a CVS code, where there's a security key that, in addition to a super key that needs to be used, so that agents can only go in if you've set that up for them during a certain time frame. But you know, that's between you and your seller. I don't do it because I think no one can sell that property better than me. I think I need to be there to show it, or one of my team does. But that's up to you entirely. I don't judge. Believe me, I like doing showings that are on super and lockbox. A lot easier, a lot faster. But I never do any of my listings that way.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I've come across that sometimes when I have a listing, I have some offers, and then a buyer asks, oh, how much do you have? You have an offer of, say, this and this price. And then they go, okay, can I please see the offer? Do I have to show them an offer?
No,
Do they have the
absolutely
right
not.
to
In
that?
fact, I would think that you would need to obtain permission from your client in order to show a copy of that offer. And you might want to check with Michael Rosales, because
Okay.
I think you might need to obtain permission from the party writing the offer as well. Right?
Okay.
It contains personal information.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure on that. I've had someone who wanted that before. I asked for permission from the person who wrote it and the client, and they told me no. And so I just forwarded that copy of that email from the other agent that said, no, I'm not comfortable with that, to the other agent. I'm like, well, if you think I'm lying, go for it. I'll just go with this other buyer. No problem.
Yeah.
You want the property, you want the property.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sign, okay? The way the contract is written is you can install a sign, but if the seller doesn't want a sign or can't have a sign, you check this box for doesn't. Additional terms. So if the property is held, if title to the property is held in the name of a trust, you need to check this box and include a trust advisory. I think we're pretty much done. The representative capacity, so I told you if there's an entity holding title to the property, there's a form for that. You check this box, you see this button, that form was auto-populated to my zip forms file. So when I hit back, there's going to be an RCSD, representative capacity signature disclosure agreement in my file that I'm also going to complete and send along with my listing agreement. This box is checked. So what does that mean? It means it's actually part of my listing agreement. Okay, it needs to go with my listing agreement. Okay, and then seller signatures, agent signature, seller advisory. Make sure, I always miss this date. Make sure you don't miss it. Okay. Consumer Privacy Act. This is all, it's all exactly what it sounds like, but again, read it. So guys, that is the listing agreement. I'm going to click back just so you can see how my representative capacity signature disclosure popped in here. It's there. And that's it. So unless you have questions.
Oh, quick question.
Sure. I saw Richard's hand first.
Yes, so how soon will this be on the,
I can't hear you. Sorry.
how soon will this be on the audio? Where I can-
Ask Alex. Alex is the lagger who's not getting these videos up, and I've asked him, but he might be more responsive to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So when will
Yeah.
I have previous versions, but you know, this was changed in June. So I'm sure there is a previous version, but you know, it's always helpful, I think, to have a newest. And it would help me and everyone else in this office if you guys asked Alex. Like, it's not a suggestion. Ask Alex, please. Yeah. Email him, ask him, text him, call him. Sorry, Alex.
Kristen,
Yeah.
Kristen,
Christine, I
would
have
you
a
please,
question, I'm sorry. If you,
John,
yes.
hold
Can I
on.
ask-
Malika's asking a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Malika.
would you please remind me which date is the beginning date of this agreement again? Which, the one on top or?
Not the top left. It's within the first
Not
like 3 lines of the body of the first page of the residential listing agreement. And it says to begin on, and it has a beginning date and then a space for an end date.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. John?
Yeah, if you representing the buyer and you put that on the offer for the buyer that I pay $5,000 over the asking price.
John, you're asking me a question about a buyer offer. You can call me later for this.
Oh, okay. I mean, about seeing the offer, my question is, can you see the other offers from the seller agent?
No, you're not entitled to seeing copy of other people's offers. No,
I can't see that.
no, you can ask for it and see if they'll bite, but no, you're not entitled to see it.
Okay, I just want to see that question. Thank you.
Mhm. Anyone else? Okay.
Kristen, as regards to the date, oh, sorry. One last question.
Yeah.
Regards to the date, so if you fill out the SELM form, which date, are you still using like the date that your seller is signing it, and then you attach the SELM form, and then you add the 6 month as the end date, is that correct?
Not on the SELM. The SELM is to exclude it from the multiple listing contract. You've already put your listing period in the top of the beginning of the listing agreement. So the SELM, you're just going to indicate that the seller has instructed you to exclude it for the entirety of the listing period. And you're going to fix that using the modification of listing document when you know you do want to actually publicly market it. It's a separate form entirely. On that form, you're going to have 2 items. The first item is going to say something like listing period is hereby amended to begin on this date and end on this date. And your second item is going to say SELM dated, whatever the date, the reference date on your SELM document is that you signed with your listing agreement, is hereby deleted in its entirety. And that's it. Did that answer?
Okay. Yeah, that did. Yeah. Thanks.
Mhm. Anybody else? Nope.
I have a question. I don't know. if you
Okay.
answered it. My mentor, does he has to sign the listing agreement?
No.
No.
You do not have to include your mentor on listing or purchase agreements, although you may if you'd like to, and it may be advantageous for you to do so. That is entirely up to you guys individually between you and your mentor, but you are not required. And if they give you a hard time about it either way, come and see me. That's not okay.
Advantageous is.
Advantageous means good.
No,
No, maybe advantageous for you. So for instance, I have a team of agents.
Yeah.
It is on my team optional if they want to include my name, but they often do. Why? I have an older DRE number. I have weight behind my name. And especially with higher end agents, they know who the fuck I am and they won't treat me the same way. Yeah. Yes. No, I never do. I think it's tacky. If I don't trust them, I generally don't work with them. Or if I do, I have nothing to lose. Like when I worked with those type of people that I didn't trust, I had no business. I was a new agent. I threw my heart and soul into every lead I had, whether or not it seemed promising. If they fucked me, they fucked me. Now I'm in a place where if I think you're gonna fuck me, I don't want to work with you. Yeah. Mhm.
I have another question too.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I've got to go. I have an appointment. One last question. Hi, I'll be up there in a second. Thank you.
So if, let's say, there's, like, let's say 3 people that own the property.
Mhm.
I just have everyone sign it on there.
Oh,
or can I
if
get
there are
one
3 people entitled to the property, all 3 need to sign the listing agreement.
on the listing agreement, or can I get one of those like additional signatures?
If there's not enough space for it and you need to add an additional signature addendum, yes, you do it that way.
Enough space is just like. you can just-
There are actual spaces where you enter the names and there's a little box that says, do you need additional
Yeah.
places? So you check it, it'll auto populate for you.
Oh,
So yeah, you won't have to figure it out. It'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you're welcome. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next week, Christine.
Yep, see you next week.
I know how to,